how we can really make this an affordable alternative, similar to the way that we can purchase electricity. That's assuming that if all of your mechanical system obviously is from electricity versus oil.
So it's a good question.
Sorry, it's long-winded, but
Sure.
I've been
Well,
thinking
so,
a lot about
To
this.
give a couple of examples, Compton's market rate, I've done habitat houses that were certified passive houses. There are builders out there who are doing larger scale stuff at less construction cost than conventional construction. So we're certainly right now in the sort of era of early adopters for a passive house. And if you're an early adopter, almost by definition, you're going to pay a premium as the sort of general learning curve catches up. So I don't think it necessarily means a giant premium for the future. But right now, yeah, you will pay extra. David, you want to talk about?
Yeah, the post frame project was built for $130 a square foot, and it was $170,000 total, and 2 houses in the same town of the same exact size, so for $200,000. So it doesn't have to be expensive. That particular project, I wouldn't say it's the most homely project in the county, but it looks like storage ward, those storage containers you go put your stuff in. It looks like one of those. Like it's not a, and for that reason, it was very easy to just delve right into making it as simple and affordable as possible. There were no challenges that the form itself presented. But the important thing to give attention to about comparing the cost of efficient infrastructure like passive houses versus renewable energy generation is that the cost to the energy user is an ongoing cost that's higher, which is obviously it's more money, versus a cost that is higher up front or a higher mortgage payment for a reduced energy cost. So depending on the cash flow situation of that person and the capital situation of that person, one can be advantageous over the other. If I'm working with somebody who's building a house, then absolutely, unequivocally, it's much more cost effective for me to make them an energy efficient house than to make a spec house and have to buy actual power.
And there's not an environmental equivalence between avoiding a kilowatt hour of energy consumption and producing that kilowatt hour renewably. There are environmental costs down the road, hydropower, dam rivers, not environmentally neutral. If you've got an off-site wind farm or solar farm or something like that, there are losses along the way, so you're not getting that unit of energy direct from the panel to your house. There's inefficiency along the way. And every financial analysis I've done shows this to have very significant net present value over a 10-year tax credit.
It's the longer view of it.
And that house also is a net zero house. So one of the ways we optimize that was to say, all right, what's the cost to the owner of one more panel of PV?
Right.
And how much energy is that panel of PV going to cost or produce versus one more inch of insulation? How much energy is that insulation going to save and how much money is it going to cost? And so we sort of thicken those walls until thickening them anymore would be more expensive than PV. So like those windows and size those windows and all those things so we get this package that we
It's practically guaranteed that a passive house will actually be net zero if you put some PV panels on the roof. It's so easy to make up the difference there. The other thing that's changing, though, in terms of what your question about the cost of construction versus passive house versus conventional, on the most recent project we found that we thought Marvin is kind of the standard, like we thought it was B+, American made. They spent a fortune on advertising. Well, it turns out, they perform really horribly. And now there's competition because of what's going on in Europe. There's manufacturing and there's competition. We're buying windows, I think, that are made in Poland that are passive house windows, which have an R8.5 or R9 triple pane, and they cost about 15% less than the Marvin double pane window, less than the Marvin double pane windows. Marvin would rather spend money on advertising than on the quality of their product. And then we thought, oh, this is so bad, we have to ship the windows from Poland instead of from Minneapolis. Well, in fact, shipping them by truck from Minneapolis was using more fuel. Minnesota was using more fuel than actually shipping them by ship from Europe.
And then I also wanted to add, there's a project in the book Onion Flats did called Belfield, which was 3 townhouses that they built for a profit. I think it was, what did he tell us, 140 square foot? You went.
Oh yeah, unbelievable.
Okay. And it's modular, and it's for population transitioning out of homeless shelter. So it's for large families. The developer, who's part of the community, she was homeless herself, and she said it's very hard for larger families to stay together when you're in the shelter system. So these are 5-bedroom units, but I guess the point is that a design build, they were able to design something nice, design it passive house, and still make a profit when it was at a lower rate. And I also, a mentor of mine is this Chris Benedict that someone mentioned. I keep going to her affordable multi-housing in New York. There's 2 projects that I've gone to, each of them 3 or 4 times. And one of them's $165 a square foot, and the other one's for $190 a square foot. And both what Tim from Onion Flats, who does design build in Philadelphia and is working on many projects, and Chris Benedict, working on multi-housing, say they do passive house for the exact same cost as standard construction. No additional cost for it, and it's for affordable housing. And I think we see that with Habitat for Humanity, actually, building passive house.
It's costing money right now.
Question from?
Yeah.
I hope this is not a silly question, but, well, I've noticed that many of the examples here are in places that are seasonal. So, but like, what about the places with milder climates? How do you convince the people in this region that passive house is a good option for them, and like when they have like maybe more traditional vernacular ways that may be cheaper?
It is a good question.
It might not be a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think.
Because you were saying how you should spread passive house
Right.
everywhere.
Right.
Like,
Well, so what passive house does primarily is it reduces your heating and your cooling energy. The other stuff, lighting, domestic hot water, appliances, all those, a conscientious homeowner or occupant can have a much greater impact on those energy uses than a good design. Whereas heating energy, that's where we as designers and architects and engineers, that's where we've got our maximum impact. If you live in Southern California, if you live in,
that's where I'm from.
Whereabouts? What part?
Near LA.
Okay, yeah, if you live on the Mediterranean coast, yeah, investing in insulation might not be a good idea because your windows are open 12 months a year.
The funny thing about passive house standard is that it's about the amount of heating the building needs. And so it's much easier to meet passive house standard in LA than it is in New York. So it might turn out to be a good match. If you have a heating system and if you have a cooling system, then it may very well be a good match for your project. But the thing that we're finding is that it depends on the kind of mechanical systems that are used, the climate, the professional culture, the size and shape of the housing that you have. And so, to me, the most essential part is understanding the fundamentals and applying them effectively.
Sure.
But it would be possible to like have passive house and like.
It's been done, yeah.
But 2 of my students last semester tried to do a passive house design for a project in Puerto Rico. And there was no heating, but to meet the cooling energy demand, because of the high humidity, was impossible. I mean, they insulated the bejesus out of this thing, they had the best recovery ventilator they possibly could. And the irony was that the house was designed not to have it cool at all, right? So instead of being, cooled to 75 inside, it could be 78 or low 80s and a steady breeze all the time, right, in this particular location. And the house was designed for that. It was oriented toward the breezes and it was open to the breezes, and that was all that was needed for comfort. And that was the norm for that location. So it's I think the question you're asking points to this issue of imposing a particular cultural norm, which is a dry continental climate with a very high construction standard, with a forced hot water system with a radiator and a thermostat in each room, and the highest standard for construction quality anywhere in the world. So applying that to the rest of the world, of course, it runs into all kinds of problems.
David made the interesting point with his post and beam project where he mentioned that they're doing cost analyses to figure out what the right trade-off between PV and insulation is. And I think that's a really important conversation to have during the design. Passive house doesn't let you contribute PV to the efficiency of the building. And so even though we might have an equivalently efficient building, it couldn't be passive house certified because it doesn't have thick enough insulation. And I think us in the passive house community, we're starting to think more critically about what are the best decisions for the project, for each individual project, rather than trying to take like a certification standard and dogmatically apply it sort of without thought. Interestingly, so the standard's very new in this country, and so in the world, particularly in this country, and so what we saw is like as people would take the class and get certified, there was a lot of dogmatic arguments taking place, like spouting the company line that passive house is the most cost-effective way to get to net zero. Passive house is the most cost-efficient energy efficiency standard in the world, and it's clearly the cost of building is not the same everywhere. So that sort of idea clearly is nonsense. Mark. But as David mentioned a couple times, taking the principles, taking the fundamentals is what's most critically important.
Anyone else?
So I've seen one example in the slideshow of it was a performance lab during residence, I believe, with a ventilated roof, and I was wondering how much of an impact that's becoming in past design, especially with its symbiotic relationship with photovoltaic panels. See that expanding in the future?
Yeah, it's our project, it's the artist residency. We've had to, obviously, we're not going to put photo PVs on top of the green roof. The roof is really done for design and aesthetic reasons because it's in the country and it's built into this south-facing hillside meadow.
Dirt bed, it's not.
It's so-called dirt, it's something
Is
that.
it traces?
No, it's really very lightweight. Right. So it will just be grasses. It does keep the roof from heating up, but I'm not sure that it does a better job than if you were to have a white membrane roof on. I'm not sure it does any better job of reflecting the sun.
I think green roofs are beautiful. I really like them. I think integrated well. They're nice. I particularly like trace systems, which aren't necessarily integrated into the roof. They're a lot, in my opinion, safer from a moisture and water management standpoint. In coldish climates, you shouldn't go to a design thinking that a green roof is going to be a performance advantage. It's beautiful. It's lovely.
It does other things.
Yeah.
Just what you
Water
said.
management.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a lot of great advantages. I talk to architects who say, well, what if we don't insulate and just do a green roof?
Doesn't
And that
doesn't.
you know what insulates really well? Insulation.
So yeah, a green or earth insulates about as well as concrete. It's not
Oh,
hard
when
like-
I'm saying greeners, I'm thinking of like 8 layers at the bottom. It's not dirt, but it's a shale sort of much lighter aggregate because the dirt's so
Yeah.
heavy.
Yeah, that would help.
So it's not enough insulation for the winter climate. It does do a lot of things. It does them okay. So it does reduce cooling loads. It does retain storm water.
Fan attenuation also.
What's that?
Fan attenuation.
Yes.
Right. the thing is, you can build all those things with conventional systems more cost effectively. The reason I like green roofs is they're beautiful. If you get a park on a roof, you know, in New York City, that's a really big deal, right? It's probably a big deal here too.
We're actually doing it on this one that's under construction right here on Shelter Island, where, you know, it's a guest house in a garage. Well, you know, garages are really ugly, especially with flat roofs. So we just said, we'll put a green roof on it, and then what we have is the only deer-proof herb garden on Shelter Island.
Do you see that something that like is going to be expanding in the future that you see people kind of going for?
Maybe in urban situations,
Yeah.
where water runoff is such a terrible problem.
Is that it? It's a wrap. Are we moving out? Please enjoy the show. Grab anyone here and ask questions about what's on the exhibit, because they do make up part of the content of the show. And also take a look at the thermal images, which I think are great to see. They explain with one look, you understand all of the heat transfer and how much standard construction is really wasting, and what we need to do to respond to it. It's invisible, but with the thermal IR camera, we can see it clearly, and it's, I think, a powerful. So we collected images from all over the country, various people taking, including Kramer, who taught the class here last semester. So please take a look at that too. Thank you.
Thank you.